Greetings, everyone. My name is Liz Burton-Crow. I'm the Director of Education for the Kurla Center for Nonviolence. Welcome back to Living One, a free monthly webinar series where presenters from around the world share their vision about psychology, life, and culture in the absence of animal exploitation. Through Living One, we attempt to answer the question, we know it's wrong, but what does right look like? This month, we welcome Cohen, who for over 35 years has helped people and dogs grow synergistic friendships based on mutual respect, trust, and harmony using a mindfulness-based approach. The heart of his philosophy is connecting with dogs on an equal level as friends and not as owner and pet. He began his career with dogs that had been deemed hopeless by others with extreme aggression, anxiety, and trauma, and worked with several high-profile cases in New York and New Jersey. Corey was the training director for the Big Apple Schutzhund Club, behavior director for the Vermont Center of Animal Behavior, director of NEK Search and Rescue in Vermont and New Hampshire, and director of behavior and outreach for the 5 branches of the Pennsylvania SPCA. In addition to working with dogs, Corey has been a student of mindfulness since the late 1970s, beginning with his first Vipassana retreat and finally studying at Karme Choling in Vermont with a Taoist Priest for 7 years. He is currently a guest lecturer at the University of Scranton in the World Religion curriculum. So thank you so much for being here, Corey. And interviewing Corey today, once again, will be our very own Dr. Gabe Bradshaw.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you and feel you here. Today, I'll just start off saying what a difference a month makes. So between the last time that we met and now, the parameters of our consciousness and the universe have, at least our perception of it, have drastically changed. And so we would like to, all of that is germane. I think that the Living One, even though some of the topics have been focused on particular aspects, it really is just now being recontextualized in this greater space of awareness. And we'd like to, before Corey shares with us, we would like to spend a few minutes with Ashley Heron, who will be reading a poem by Kristen Flintz. Kristen is a dear friend, mentor, and she graced Carrillo's as an intern, and I think she's here right now, so it's a very special time. So, Ashley, would you please read the poem?
Yes, I will. Okay. So the poem is titled An Imagined Letter from COVID-19 to Humans by Kristen Flintz. Stop. Just stop. It is no longer a request, it is a mandate. We will help you. We will bring the supersonic high-speed merry-go-round to a halt. We will stop the planes, the trains, the schools, the malls, the meetings, the frenetic fury rushed of illusions and obligations that keep you from hearing our single and shared beating heart. The way we breathe together, in unison. Our obligation is to each other, as it has always been, even though you have forgotten. We will interrupt this broadcast, the endless cacophonous broadcast of divisions and distractions, to bring you this long breaking news. We are not well. None of us. All of us are suffering. Last year, the firestorms that scorched the lungs of the earth did not give you pause, nor the typhoons in Africa, China, Japan, nor the fevered climates in Japan and India. You have not been listening. It is hard to listen when you are so busy all the time, hustling to uphold the comforts and conveniences that scaffold your lives. But the foundation is giving way, buckling under the weight of your needs and desires. We will help you. We will bring the firestorms to your body. We will bring the fever to your body. We will bring the burning, searing, and flooding to your lungs that you might hear. We are not well. Despite what you might think or feel, we are not the enemy. We are messenger. We are ally. We are a balancing force. We are asking you to stop, to be still, to listen, to move beyond your individual concerns and consider the concerns of all, to be with your ignorance, to find your humility, to relinquish your thinking minds and travel deep into the mind of the heart, to look up into the sky, streaked with fewer planes, and see it, to notice its condition, clear, smoky, smoggy, rainy. How much do you need it to be healthy so that you may also be healthy? To look at a tree and see it, to notice its condition. How does its health contribute to the health of the sky, to the air you need to be healthy? To visit a river and see it, to notice its condition. Clear, clean, murky, polluted? How much do you need it to be healthy so that you may also be healthy? How does its health contribute to the health of the tree, who contributes to the health of the sky, so that you may also be healthy? Many are afraid now. Do not demonize your fear, and also do not let it rule you. Instead, let it speak to you in your stillness. Listen for its wisdom. What might it be telling you about what is at work, at issue, at risk, beyond the threats of personal inconvenience and illness? As the health of a tree, a river, the sky tells you about quality of your own health. What might the quality of your health tell you about the health of the rivers, the trees, the sky, and all of us who share this planet with you? Stop. Notice if you are resisting. Notice what you are resisting. Ask why. Stop. Just stop. Be still. Listen. Ask us what we might teach you about illness and healing, about what might be required so that you may be well. We will help you if you listen.
Thank you, Ashley. I wanted to just take a moment, since we have the luxury of having the poet here. Kristen, is there anything you'd like to reflect and share with us here?
So she says here in the text box, thank you so much for reading, Ashley. My mic is not working. I'm deeply grateful for you, including the poem in the opening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you, Ashley. That was lovely. Well, more thoughts can be shared at the after we've finished the discussion with Corey. I just wanted to say that I just feel that this, if people haven't heard it, this has literally gone viral and has been produced by Sustainable Human in a video, which we put on our website, and others can access it. I'm sure you'll see it if you're on social media. It's also been put to music by a gentleman named Gary Malkin, and I believe his partner, I don't know her first name, but John Stead. And it's been translated, Kristen said, in 25 languages. And Kristen just posted this on her Facebook to her friends, and it really struck a note. And I think it's a very beautiful, wonderful message that is resonating with so many people in so many very deep ways, in non-verbal ways. Even though it was a verbal rendition, I think it's really been helpful to bring and revitalize this space of being, which really lies beyond this artificial house of cards. And in so doing, it also has internal instructions, in a sense, not instructions like a handbook, but instructions in the sense of what I would call the divine speaking. And that's my own experience of what is happening in terms of the obviously terrible suffering, fear, you name all the top 10 horrible things that will continue and then we will experience either personally or indirectly. But I really think that it's one of those things to keep in our hearts and our minds and our souls, that there's something really incredible happening around the universe. So thank you. So now we're going to turn and talk to Corey. You've heard his introduction, and Corey, I would just like to open, my usual question, or a typical question I ask interviewees, is to sort of give an idea of, for the viewers to situate, to contextualize, give them an idea of how you came to be and who you are. And feel free to expand it in terms of, bringing in the present situation and awareness.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gay, and thanks for having me here. I basically have always been with dogs since I was, even before I can remember. Grew up in an area where really I was the only one my age, so I had really no human friends to hang out with, but we always had dogs in the house. My dad dealt with dogs when he was in the Army in World War II, and our family have always had them. So my dogs were really my friends, and I didn't necessarily think of them, well, I have a dog friend. They were just friend. So I grew up with them, and it was just a natural relationship, which I really feel most kids really have with the dogs until we sort of teach them otherwise. But that's really how it started. And I've always just been with them my whole life with them, and not as a person who wants to control them or wants to train them, although that's what I've done in parts of my career. But it's been more that it's just been the missing piece for me. That's how it's always felt.
So just reflecting on, what's going on in our awareness now, talk about dogs within that space, and that space of, all of a sudden we've been, catapulted into a very different consciousness, and I use the term awareness. And talk about dogs, and your dogs, or the individuals.
Well, in a way, we've kind of gone more into their realm of being. Before all this has started to happen, we were so worried about what was on the schedule for next week, or thinking about the things we did before. We've always been just sort of mindlessly going about our routines, etc. But dogs don't usually do that. Dogs are really, they're just focused on what about right now? What's going on here? And so this kind of situation that we're all in, with the self-isolation and the quarantining and the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, almost in a way forces us to become a little bit more connected to the present, because we don't really know. We don't have we don't have the agenda of what's going to happen next week on our calendars. That's all ended. So we're really focused much more in a way on being present and dealing with how we feel and what we're doing today, right now, as opposed to letting the time slip by, always worried about what's going to happen next week and next month and next year. And that, in a way, brings us much closer to our dog's experience. We're aligning much more with their experience of their life. Now, yes, we have the fear. We understand what's going on, so we have that fear of, or that anxiety of, everything's changing for us, but that fear itself is a product of the more future and what's going to happen, where we're sort of forced into this daily just being present here, because what else are we going to do right now? And that brings us a lot, in my opinion, brings us a lot closer to where our dogs are.
Play ball, go take a walk, right?
Just sit with them. Sit with them and get to know them. I always do what I call mindful mutt moments. And I know mutt, some people don't like the word mutt, but someone once told me to go kiss a mutt. So I've always used that word. But mindful mutt moment, when we're sitting, we're with our dogs, we're petting them and we're connecting with them. But usually a lot of people we'd be doing this while we're watching television, or we're on our computers, or we're having a conversation, and we kind of mindlessly reach out and pet them. But it is a really good time to really get to know our dogs, not just what they do, but get to know them by just spending a few moments with them and feeling, whether you're petting them or you're just looking at them, get to know every nuance and every little aspect of them right now. I do like what I call landscaping. So when I pet my dogs, I don't know if you can see Bodhi here. There he is. When I pet him and my hand goes over him and I'm petting him slowly from his head all the way down, to me, it's like a landscape of valleys and hills and mountains and soft spots and hard spots. And I get to know him so well because I'm not thinking about other things while I'm doing it. I'm beginning to really learn and be with him in this moment with this. And our dogs feel that. When we connect, it's like having two different levels. And once they're connected, it locks in. And not only did it help his anxiety, it helps my anxiety as well.
So dogs have been quote unquote domesticated with humans. What is it, 10,000 years? I've forgotten the statistic.
Something like that, yeah.
So just to get a little pseudo intellectual right now, so what is it about that? Why is it that dogs don't seem to have, that's a long time, right? 10,000 years is a long time in terms of dog years and generations. And yet the majority of dogs that I've met and that I've known don't do the kind of dissociation that I do, for example, that you were talking about, like with my Doberman Fritzy, that story I told you, I was sitting in the morning with my coffee and Fritzy came up and had his ball, and I'm like, oh, I love you, and I'm typing, oh, I love you, and I'm typing. And then finally, after 4 or 5 times, he put his ball down. He came up to me about this far and went, woof, like, hello. And so why is it, or how is it that dogs have retained, for the most part, that deep connection to presence, to listening, and not develop this kind of pattern of a dissociation and feeling of disconnection? Although obviously there are cases of trauma that there are that. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I think part of it is also their sort of enhanced sensibility, meaning their enhanced sense of smell and hearing, and even some aspects of their vision. They're really tuned in to the present. I know when I used to do search and rescue and tracking, the detail that they can connect to is phenomenal. It really is. And it's not like, we walk past, I do a lot of hiking, and a lot of times I'm walking, and as I'm walking, of course, my mind is wandering, but sometimes I watch my dogs will stop and get engaged so much with the tip of a leaf, just some random scent on the tip of a leaf for sometimes up to a minute. And it's seeing that detail and not taking all that stuff for granted that I think really grounds them so much, and which actually makes them really wonderful reason I think that for 10,000 years we've been together is that they complete something that we don't have. In other words, we're really good as human beings of seeing the bigger picture. I can see further down the road, so to speak, than my dogs can. But my dogs are much better at seeing the detail. So we're sort of like 2 halves of one whole. And together we make a fantastic and amazing team with that. And if we can learn to tap into some of their expertise and their skill sets of this just fascination of even the most simplest little things, it makes a big difference. So I think a lot of it has to do with their senses, that they really are enhanced about what's right in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it reminds me of some lines in Kristen's poem, where, to me, when I put those two together, it's really our shifting of values. So for the dog, in that movie, Dean Spanley, which you haven't watched, he's talking about, Peter O'Toole's talking about his dog, and no, it's not. It's the Dean Spanley is talking about. He says, when a person yanks on the leash, when the dog is smelling something, it's like pulling someone out of the, Ashmolean Museum, a scholar at it. But so in other words, it's the values, and again with Kristen's, it's shifting. And if I'm going to put it this way, shifting the centroid of what our values are. So it's not just acquiring the skills, but it's also moving into that space and then sort of reorienting that coordinate space of values and importance.
And I think we've all had it. I mean, as children, we're so involved in what's in front of us. And until we learn through various ways to kind of forget that, that's just unimportant. You see a child pick up a leaf or a stick and they're looking at it, and quite often the parent will say, come on, let that go, that's garbage, come on, let's go over here and do what's important. So we're taught right away that those kind of so-called insignificant things are not as important as the so-called significant things. And I think that that's a mistake. And what happens with our dogs is we can get back to that, to say, you know what, there is something fascinating about this stick or this leaf. If we really look at it and spend time watching it, and dogs can really, if we allow ourselves to go into their level to do this, I think it adds a whole lot. And again, that's why I think we're such great partners in that way, humans and dogs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my assertion, is that that's the process of meaning making. And essentially what we have been struggling, at least what I've experienced, and I think others have experienced over X amount of years, this tension between, we call it one paradigm and another paradigm, or, feeling uncomfortable. It's just that, our artificial world, the way we do things, is not working. It doesn't fit. And the various symptoms that are associated with that. And there's been efforts, to try to, different ideas and different language, like non-dualism and complexity. This is with organic to science, groping, Charles Eisenstein talks about, or Thich Nhat Hanh, he uses Thich Nhat Hanh's term interbeing. So through our linguistics, we're trying to form things in our mind, in our communication, in our relationship, that give meaning to something that we've experienced or are trying to reach into. So to me, that whole process you're talking about with the dogs is a process of meaning making and developing, as I say, these new narratives. So, in the sense of that, it's not just interesting, but again, you're always going to hear ad nauseum about Charlie. It's really understanding what's important to the dog, and what's important to the dog when you're sharing your life together is important, not just because you love them, but because you're sharing and building meaning and a life together that is not privileged, that's enmeshed.
Absolutely, it's on an equal level.
Mm-hmm.
And equal doesn't necessarily mean the same. A lot of people, when I deal with some people and say, well, the first thing is, let's change our mindset to see our dogs as equals. And right away it's said, well, they're not the same. And I agree, they're not the same, but they are equal. So sort of a metaphor is, I have a heart and I have lungs and I have a kidney, and they're not the same, yet they're equal, because each one is equally as important. Without it, I couldn't exist. And the fact that they all work together in that equal space, I, as me, can exist, which is something bigger than each one that are separate. So our dogs are not the same as us, and that's a great thing. But they are, if we see them as equals, and we don't sort of see them as this separate inferior, the connection that we have with them is far better than it's a way of, not only does it help them, it helps us as well, and it creates a bigger, better picture. That's that sort of synergistic result that happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how do you see, are there sort of concrete ways, or maybe you can describe how your life and how you exist, and within the human world, we'll call it that, within the bigger world, have become dog integrated?
Meaning what? Ask that in a slightly different way.
Well, the way you described is that you say there's no higher or lower. There may be differences, but there's equality, and translating that into lived existence and perception, everything that goes with it. What are things, and how you and your dogs, how's that been working out, and what does that look like?
Well, if you were to see it if you were pass by and see me with my dogs, it probably wouldn't look much different than other people. The difference is, though, several things. One, I don't always feel that what I say has to go. There's no hierarchy here. I'm not always the boss. So when my dogs and I live together, they have as much say, this is their home as much as it is my home. So they have as much say as I have. However, sometimes there's going to be some conflict. Any creatures that live together are inevitably going to come into conflict with each other. So there's going to be some friction. But that friction, that conflict has to be worked out together. And I always like to say, instead of friction, it's more traction. Because wherever there's friction, you have traction. And that traction is a good starting point to move forward. So if, let's say, Bodhi here decides that while I'm sitting and eating, he wants to jump on the table and eat out of my plate. And I don't like that, which he tried once. It's not that I'm going to scold him and tell him bad dog. We're going to work out a different sort of system where he gets what he wants and I get what I want. We work out a way that it's going to be better for both of us in that way. So that could be as much me changing my routine as him changing his routine. You know, the old saying is sometimes you have to give up something of a lesser order to get something of a higher order. So if I decide not to maybe sit on the couch and eat and rather sit at the table so he doesn't do that, then that's fine. If that makes it easier for him, I'm willing to give that up. So it's where cooperation and collaboration replace control and sort of this dominant submissive type of relationship.
Is there, have you encountered, we'll call it friction that moved into traction in this process with your human relationships?
Oh, all the time.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. There's always a way of, once we get into the idea of I'm right, you're wrong, or I'm wrong, you're right, that puts a huge wall and divides us. And then there's going to be no solution to that, because then it becomes a case of a winner, and if there's a winner, there's a loser. And quite often there is a way around that, that's saying, you know what, I see we have a disagreement on this. Let's work this out together, where ideal goal is we get something better, but even in a lesser degree, we get something that we can learn to live with. But it's the same as with humans. I work it out with the dogs the same as I would work it out with humans.
Mm-hmm. And what you're really calling on also is nonviolent communication, right?
Oh, sure.
You've studied
Absolutely.
that, or bring that into your work.
Yep.
And that's something that you bring into your work with your clients, humans that are living with dogs and having issues or something. You bring those skills to the humans.
Yes, all the time. I try to bring in as much as possible, because in the long run, it really is what cements the relationship together, and it helps it grow and evolve by itself. When things are just sort of piecemeal solved, there's no organic process that flows after that. But if you establish a correct relationship, then throughout the existence together, the two, there'll always be a way of solving it, even things that never have come up before. The stronger you have that sort of ability to work it out, to resolve the conflicts together, then you don't need, well, here's a solution for this, or here's a solution for this, as if you were trying to fix a car, right? So if I hear a noise in my car, I take it to the mechanic and he changes a belt or something like that, and it's done. But it's different when it's a relational problem or relational difficulty. You want to establish it so the relationship continues to grow in the right direction more organically. So really all that I do is I just make slight shifts in the perceptions of the people, and hopefully some shifts in the perceptions of the dog, so it now sets off on the right foot. Because there'll always be conflicts. There'll always be some sort of conflicts, but the more the skills are there, and the more the ideas there that they need to be solved or worked out together as friends and as equals, then I can step out of the way and allow it all to happen naturally, which is a much better way to be.
I think you bring up something really important, having to do with organic or complex adaptive systems. That you're working at, we'll call it your traction point, and then that is resolved in some fashion, and then there's a new space. right? And that's also a transformation of the quote unquote two individuals who are involved. And so the parameters change. And so it's this constant newness potential of change and transformation.
It is. And I think a lot of it starts with having the faith that it's going to work out. I mean, I firmly believe it's an incredibly natural relationship, humans and dogs, because I see it with kids. I know it was myself as a child, but I see it with so many kids that haven't learned anything else. It's just so natural. So the natural ability for relationships to sort of heal themselves, I think it's there. And I think a lot of it, sometimes it's just a matter of stepping out of the way and allowing that healing process to unfold naturally. Sometimes we make more of a mess trying to fix it and to force it. It's like planting something and keep pulling up on the stem to try and get it to grow faster. It doesn't work that way. It's going to grow itself if we just make sure everything around it is fine, but allow it to grow on its own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think what you're bringing up is a very specific example. Again, Kristen's poem, that one word that was so really hit me was ally. I shared her poem with many friends and colleagues, and it was interesting how a couple of my friends who are very, very, very deeply spiritual, but one of them is a nurse and the other is a doctor, and they're both from back east, and she goes, I don't know, when I look at that virus, I just don't see ally here, and I think, which I appreciate, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I see this thread. It's so, this is my own experience in the way you're describing it. As soon as you take something off the table, like opposition or difference or conflict, you know what I mean? If you just take them off the table, it's such a huge transformation. It's just such a huge transformation. I mean, even, like I said, with Kristen's poem Ally, and you've got that in the visual, you've got this little, and I could very well get it. And I'm sure I'm not sure how I'm going to feel if I get it. You know what I mean? If I'm going to be talking ally speak. But I just found that, wow, that was such a transformation. You know what I'm saying? It's like completely, like you're coming out of the clouds, and seeing a completely vast, different orientation. And I really feel like that's essentially what this situation is calling for. It's saying, many, many spiritual teachers have talked about that in your own, your own study in Taoism and Buddhism. And I feel like the example that you're talking about with the dog, in a very concrete kind of a cloistered set of circumstances, is very much the same thing. As we said, that commitment, it's not just having the faith, it's saying, we're going to work this out. And then the stakes get lower, there's not this tension that builds up. So I really see that kind of continuity.
Right. It doesn't have to be winners and losers, because first of all, why would you want that with your dog? I got what I want, I'm in control, but how does the dog feel? Or the other way around. Well, my dog gets what he wants, but I have nothing. And that's not good either. So rather than seeing versus, using the word versus, we're on the same side, trying to steer it. It's like going with the current and leading that way rather than trying to go against it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, what I hear in many ways, I'm sure you all have, is this notion of, these new narratives that we need. And some of the imagery right there, like looking, like you just said, looking at the situation as such as a stream, right? Rather than, say, opposing atoms or whatever that image would be. And just that shifting of just framing and changing our perception. Everything's the same, but the power of changing perception is incredibly incredibly potent.
It is. I have to tell you a story about perception and how it really taught me a lesson. When I was and I was working with the Pennsylvania SPCA, and I used to spend different times at different branches. And there was one branch that I spent time with, and we had at the branch a few days a week. We had this young girl come in on a sort of a work study because she was mentally challenged or intellectually challenged. I wish I was as intellectually challenged as she was, because she really taught me so much. But there was a time where the dog warden had brought in this dog named Bear. Was a huge, probably a Newfoundland something mix. And he had to bring Bear in on a snare pole because Bear really was not having a good day, so to speak. You couldn't get near Bear. So I remember him putting Bear in the back kennel. And so I said, okay, I know what to do here. This is what I do for a living. I'm good at this. I can handle Bear. I'm going to go back there, and we're going to get this straight. Well, I guess Bear never read my resume because he didn't really decide that it was good for me to do this. So we let him stay for the day. The next morning, this young girl who was dropped off and came in, and the first thing she always did was go back and start cleaning the kennels. And it was early. I only had half a cup of coffee, so I was sort of not thinking about it. And then she walked back there, and then it dawned on me that I didn't tell her, do not go into this kennel, because Bear was there. And so in a panic, I ran back. And there she is in the kennel, sitting next to Bear, Bear's head on her lap, and she's petting him. And as soon as I got up to the front of it, Bear kind of looked at me like, hey, back off. But she didn't see, here's the thing, perception. She walked in, she didn't have this label for Bear as he's aggressive, he's mean, he's this. She just walked in as, oh, here's someone I can connect with. And Bear saw that, obviously, and she went in, and she was just, it was fine. Nobody else would be able to walk in there. If I had told her beforehand, Lauren, don't go in there, don't do this because this is what's happening, it would have sort of prejudiced her against him and sort of given her this idea. But her perception was, oh, here's a beautiful, big, fluffy black dog. Let me go in and let me help him out. And Bear was like, come on, let's do it. This is great. You see me as I am, not as the labels you give me. So it's all about that perception. Taught me a very, very valuable lesson, not just in humility, but also on perception there.
Mm-hmm. And you do actively practice contemplative studies and meditation, and bringing that sort of work in to you when you're around new dogs or everyday life.
Of course, all the time.
You think that's essential?
I think it's very essential, because I don't want to see the labels of the boxes or what we're supposedly these dogs are. In fact, I sometimes don't even like the idea of saying, oh, this is a dog, because every time we put something in a box, we've sort of separated it from everything else. So this is just a being and an experience that's there, and it really shines through who they are, because there are different moment to moment to moment to moment. Yeah. They're not the same constantly. It's, again, to use a well-worn metaphor, but it's like ripples in a stream. It's not the same. Or the old saying, you can never step into the same river twice. And if we put these labels on dogs, and before I see them, or when we see them, say, oh, this one is shy, or this one is aggressive, or this is this kind of breed, or even, again, this is a dog, we already come with these preconceived ideas and notions, and it clouds our vision, and it clouds making that connection. There are barriers that prevent that connection. Mm-hmm. Now, the words and the labels are absolutely useful, but they're useful tools, and they're great servants, but poor masters, as the saying goes. And at first, it's best to just suspend all of that and really just connect and experience. Then you can make some assessments after that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Charlie Russell when he talked about bears, and he would say, he says, when you see a bear, it's not just bear, it's a particular bear at a particular time, at a particular context, with a particular history. And then there's you, you know, I'm me at a certain time in a certain place. And, the space you both try to meet in is in this unencumbered space of the absolute present.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think, bringing the thread to, Kristen's poem and all of this is that, and all of the, non-dualistic teachings, which include Buddhism, mystic Christianity, and others, I don't know them all, but the whole concept is really just dispelling with difference. And I think that's really earmarks our culture, our present dominant culture, is that difference is the first thing that kind of comes into our perceptual field. If we have like a set of little perceptual cards, well, the first one is difference, and then maybe there's all these other kinds of things, that come in. And I think non-dualism basically dispels the whole concept of difference.
We do. I mean, we spend so much time focusing on differences, less time focusing on similarities. And I think the least amount of time, unfortunately, is focusing on the connections and how we're all interconnected in this way, because we are. And the boundaries around us that we draw, I always picture sort of a big black Sharpie saying, this is me, Corey, with this big Sharpie around me, or this is dog, or this is Bodhi. It walls us off and separates us, and it suffocates us in a way. We can't breathe. If we're that separate, we can't breathe.
Would you say that it's a useful way to look at things, is to say to not talk about differences, not talk about similarities, just talk about experiences, or come into that way?
I would say get rid of nouns altogether and just use verbs. Was that tribe, I think in the Northwest, Nuntuka tribe, most of their language is simply verbs. So my dog is not Bodhi as a noun, he's Bodhi-ing, ing. He's this way, or I'm Coreying at this moment, which may be very different an hour from now. So I try to see everything more as a verb.
Yeah, which is the experiential and relational, and the relational.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he's not bodying in a void, he's bodying in a context.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, there was something else that, you talked about, our biases. It's related. And, I just love it. That one exercise that you work with with your clients when you get the photo.
Oh, yeah, sure. So
it's kind of related. I just think it's really a fun little exercise.
So this is an exercise, and I borrowed this from someone who did it with people, and I forgot who. So if they're out there, I thank you for letting me borrow this. But what I have people do is I say, especially people who really they can't get past the labels that they give their dog. He's aggressive, or he's shy, so what I do is I have them print out a photograph of their dog and take a magic marker, and over that photograph, I say, I just want you to write over their picture every label you've given them, every name, every idea. So it could be their name, it could be their breed, it could be the labels you give them, shy, funny, and I really try to get them to think of all the different labels and names and stuff they give them. And if they do the exercise correctly and they're writing over that picture, at the end of the exercise, they no longer see their dog. All they see are the labels that are written over it. And it shows how we really clarify that we don't clarify who they are, and then to wipe that away and to see them again is so much it's revealing about how we prejudge constantly.
So I see, I know there's going to be a lot of questions for you, so I don't want to use them all up, but it seems to me that one of these amazing opportunities is to, even if, we're living in an apartment in an urban area, if they're with another being that's human, not human, like a tomato plant or a dog, a cat, hedgehog, bird, anything, the spider, that we really have an opportunity in this period to take some of these ideas and these lessons and understand these individuals as allies and understand them as us, in the sense of not making the projection assumptions the way you're talking about, but saying, oh, what do I need to hear? So it just seems like this period, if some of us are able to have that kind of retreat, that kind of sanctuary feeling, is to start to explore some of these ideas and ways of being.
I agree. And it's a great time to do that. Unfortunately, it had to happen with such a bad experience that the world is suffering now. But at least if we can turn a little bit into some light and some good comes out of it, maybe we can take the time to stop and just listen and focus on just what's around us right now, and our dogs. And I use dogs because that's what I've grown up with, but it could be rabbits and turkeys and cats and fish and birds, and it really doesn't matter. It could be the rose plant growing in the garden. Taking that moment to just be with them and experience with them rather than the constant worrying about. And now that a lot of us are sort of sequestered in our homes, now is a good opportunity to give it a try. Let's see what happens.
I noticed that, when all this has been happening, that, I see the wild turkeys and I see, Snoodley, our other turkey, and their chicken, and the rabbits, and life is pretty much, nothing's happened. I mean, not that they're not going to be feeling these repercussions in some fashion. And it really underscored to me, I could see so vividly, and then you turn on the news, or, something personal happens, right? And it's like, wow, talk about two different realities. And that's, to me, has been sort of my medium of saying, okay, how do we bring those in together? What dissolves? If you dissolve those differences, what starts falling away in that way? So that's how I see the way you're describing is this wonderful opportunity to experience and create new meaning with what we would call nature, which is anyone but us in that sense. So, well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you both for another wonderful interview, and just bringing it back to the poem at the beginning. I think that at least what's resonating for me in this moment is not only stop, but stop, sit, stay. So I think that brings together both worlds. And thank you very much, Kristen, for the beautiful poem as well, and Ashley for reading it. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we end the recording. Next month, we'll be meeting on May 3rd. We have Stephen Harnad, who's going to be our guest. And so we hope that you will join us next month. So thank you so much for being here, Corey. And thank you so much for wonderful interview today.
Thank you.